Welcome, everybody, to the Ohio Fly Tying Guild. I'm Gary Begley. This will be session 6. Thanks for joining us. I say us because there's several people here with me online via Zoom. Several of them my home fly fishing area, Buckeye United Fly Fishers in Cincinnati, and we've got people from various other parts of the country. I'll go ahead and get started. What I have planned is I got two dubbing loop techniques that I've not shown before, shown quite a few, and I got two more that you very probably haven't seen because they're not very popular, but they're certainly very usable. Two completely different methods of dubbing that are rarely seen. You may not have seen those. And in order to do the demonstrations for those two items I mentioned, I need to use some dubbing wax. We've not talked about dubbing wax, which I'd like to tonight. Well, I need to tonight, because I'm familiar with 3 different types, and I have examples tonight, and I'll show you how to use each of the 3. They're different. They need to be utilized differently. Start off with just some basic dubbing wax. I call it tube wax because it comes in a tube. This is session 6, as I said. In the first 4, I didn't use any wax at all, which proves you don't absolutely have to have dubbing wax. We just use it whenever I just use it whenever it's going to be helpful for me in the dubbing process. I just basically use it to get some traction, so to speak, between the thread and the dubbing material. And this comes in a tube, not unlike a lipstick. Lid unscrews, and you can run it, twist it up real high. You don't want to use it with it twisted out real high. You just want it to be just barely coming out of the tube. Maybe 1 thread width or 2, tying thread width or 2. Creates a big mess if you don't. It'll run. You end up running gullies inside here, and you get big blobs of dubbing wax, and that's not going to look good on your fly at all. That's a tip I got from Al Beatty, who is online with us tonight, from Fly Tire Magazine years ago. I'm going to show you touch dubbing. And touch dubbing, you absolutely have to have good dubbing wax. I got some from Al, the Beatties, Al and Gretchen, and this is tacky dubbing wax. You can tell it certainly looks different. It is very, very tacky. Trust me. I'm not going to do it tonight because I don't want to get my finger all tacky, but I can touch my finger to that and pick the whole tube up. Because it's that tacky. And those two aside, there's another type of wax that I like to use. I call it a cake wax. This is one particular brand. There are others on the market. And there's recipes online where you can make your own. And this is a hard cake. You can tell it's hard. Smack it with a pen, you can hear it. And actually, I can't take credit for this. This is a technique that I learned from online via YouTube. It's a Davy McPhail method. You can see where that used to be a full-size cake. And I have pinched pieces off of it to use while I'm tying. The technique that Davey uses, and it works real well, just put the cake in a bowl of warm water, pinch off little discs like this. And what I do, in fact, I'm going to put one in there now, put the body heat that softens it up the rest of the way. I just put one right there on the side of my ring finger and close this finger on. And I'll hold that there while I'm getting ready for the first fly, the first demonstration, and it'll get warmed up and be ready to go, nice and soft. See, I've got several of them pinched off there. And this stuff works really well. It's not going to be nearly as tacky as this wax that we use for touch dubbing. Of course, it doesn't need to be. Just waxed thread. Most threads that we buy do come waxed on the spool, but it's a different type of wax. It's not a substitute for dubbing wax. Two different animals, frankly. One other thing, this is my personal view, and I'm in a large majority that agree that the dubbing wax needs to go on the thread, not on your forefinger and thumb. As far as I'm concerned, if you got the wax on your finger and thumb and you twist it on with that, aren't you just matting down any bugginess or liveliness or texture that the dubbing might have to give you? My opinion. Actually, this is already starting to get tacky. What I do is put this small piece, took it out from between these two fingers, and I can stick this right here on the side of my index finger, and it stays there. While I tie, I can hold it on if it starts getting cool and it needs to be warmed up a little. I can just grab it with my other finger to hold it there, and that way, when let me get some thread over here. Well, I got my thread hanging. All I have to do, lay the thread on there, close this up, and that puts a real thin coat of wax on there. Look up at the top of the frame on purpose. Doesn't want you guys to be able to see what I'm doing with the dubbing loop down below. So I'll just start my thread. I'm just gonna give you the basics here. Just show some touch dubbing, not tying a fly yet. All right, so there's my bit of a thread base. Dubbing wax. Again, just a very small amount out the top of the tube. And I'm just going to touch this to it. There's too much there. There we go. That's better. Still a little bit more than what I need, but and simply, I'm sure this is why they call it touch dubbing, because all you have to do is touch the dubbing to the thread, and it sticks right there. Now, granted, so I got too much, it's making a bit blob of dubbing, and it doesn't look like much right there. I have to agree, but all you need to do is twist it up, and you got a dubbing noodle. And then simply wrap. So there's a section of a dubbing body, dubbed body, I should say. And can't really zoom in much with my camera angle. You guys get the idea. It occurred to me while I was utilizing this technique, and there's another one that I'll be showing later. These might be the easiest methods that we can use for dubbing. Let me get another hook in the vise. I'm not going to tie a fly yet, just show you how to tie a body. A body technique, I should say. All right. Pull this down. I'm going to incorporate some touch dubbing with a dubbing loop. Yeah, that's way too much. I'm going to mix two colors. What I'll do is I'll blend the body. I'm going to have, these are both hare's ear. One's dark, one's light. And got my dubbing wax on. Use the darker at first. A little more wax down through here, not that much. Probably dishing on too much. Okay. Spin that up. And then there, create a dubbing loop. Put that in to hold that together. Now the light color. Push that back up. So now I got darker color and lighter color. And I'm going to spin this. Spin just a small amount. And you come up with a spiral. Pardon me, spiral body potentially. I'm going to go ahead and spin it more. And it's going to create more of a blended color as opposed to a spiral. Now wrap that body. Pull my working thread out of the way. Got that. And like I said, I can't really zoom in quite so well with this, but and zoom into this. That one was a spiral that I tied previously. And this is one with the same two colors that create a blended color. So just being a little creative with some dubbing and dubbing loops. We have one other technique I want to show you with the dubbing loop and touch dubbing. And this time I'm going to tie fly. First fly is going to be a caddis larva. Using a little bit heavier thread this time, because I'm going to dub one section of a dubbing loop, and the other section I'm going to leave just bare thread. The idea behind it, I'm going to create a rib with part B, I'll say, of the dubbing loop. some dubbing that I mixed specifically for this pattern. I had it before. We used to call it the tie and lie, but I'm using a totally different technique this time. That color shows up better. I think I should let you guys be the judge of that. Now, so I've got dubbing on one side, and I'm going to leave bare thread on the other. This together. I'm just going to spin this about 5 turns. Yeah, here is the bare thread is going to create what appears to be a rib. And that's going to be difficult for you guys to see. I have one I can show you though. I want to make sure the camera was at an angle where you could see what I'm doing with the dubbing loop. I'm not going to bother to put a half inch yet because I want to do a little, I want to put some dubbing on to create the black head. And I'm going to switch to black dubbing. And I'm going to use a little bit of this wax for this small chore. And finish. This is one I tied earlier, and you can see, maybe you can see, yeah, it's like body segmentations with the dubbing. Any questions, any comments?
Yeah, I kind of like using that two-tone loop that you did. That was pretty nice. I never even thought about doing it that way.
Yeah, that's a neat
Different
technique.
colors.
Yep. Yep. And yeah, you wouldn't have to use touch dubbing if you didn't want to accomplish that, of course. And there's 2 or 3 of those tips. I may not have done them justice, but I got them from Alan Gresham's book. And I believe that covers everything I wanted to with dubbing loops. So that brings me to the second fly, the Dave Whitlock original. I do want to show you a very unique way that Dave did his dubbing. Together there. But anyway, he didn't use dubbing wax. He didn't use any of the conventional style dubbing methods that I've shown you that, frankly, I don't know that I've seen anyone except for Dave Whitlock do this in a DVD that I have of his. First thing, we use about 8 wraps of lead wire. Of course, you can adjust it for how much you want, but a rule of thumb, but the diameter of the lead generally matches the diameter of the wire for the hook. Again, doesn't have to. You can add heavier if you wish. This one's going to have more than 8. I like to have this thread back a little bit off the hook eye. Use orange thread. Just like to zoom back to the rear. I'm not one of those tires that insist that you have to cover up every single wrap of thread of the lead at all. I just like to build a little bit of a ramp here to keep it from sliding forward, and the same back in the back. Now they did something a little bit different with this as far as I have a tag. I have a tag of Flashabou. And this is odd thing. There's the Flashabou. It doesn't have a color listed on here. It does have 6967. It's really cool stuff. It's got different hues to it. What it is, I did a little research and figured out what it was. It's pearl that's been dyed orange. So depending on the light, how the light shines on it, you have all kinds of different colors that could pop up. Pull that to length. All right, now I'm gonna run a tag down partway around the bend and then come back up. This is one of the few times you'll see me with head cement. I'm gonna put a little bit of head cement on the hook back there, because this Flashabou is slippery, and of course we all know the hook is slippery. I'm gonna run this down, like I said, around the bend. Which reminds me of a technique used with full-breasted land and salmon, flies, or some older steelhead fly. Bay and D5. Push that out of the way. Save this rest of this Flashabou, because that's what I'm going to use for the rib. Now we're going to need a tail. I'm back up to my threads at the barb. And the tail I'll get from the zonker strip of red fox squirrel. About 3/8 of an inch along the leather. I'm gonna cut this off camera. And that's going to be my tail. If you want to go long one, get rid of that. Got some fluff here to get rid of. There's 3 longs. All right, I want this to be about 1/3 or half the length of the hook shank. And there's the tail. On the way back down, I have my rib material in. I tried leaving, since this is the same material as that tag, I tried the first time around just leaving the excess hang there after I wrapped the tag, but it got in the way whenever I was going to tie on the tail, and it just wasn't going to be acceptable in my mind. So I just cut it off and tie it back on a little bit later. Now, this is actually I'm going to use 2 different dubbings. Here we go. There's blend SLF, which stands for synthetic living fibers. There's David Whitlock special blend. There is a Nymph color, Abdomen color, and a Thorax color. Of course, one's darker than the other. Like I mentioned, I do have a DVD of Dave tying this fly, and he uses hair from the squirrel itself and mixes just a little bit of ant on it. Well, this is totally synthetic, I believe, and it's really, really buggy, really spiky. There we go. On the right camera. Really spiky, buggy. What's that? Very, very flashy. Even flashes in front of the camera. So what I've done was take some of this SLF and mix a little bit of hair from the actual squirrel. Now here's the method that Dave Whitlock uses to dub. Doesn't use any wax at all. Barely uses the thread. I am going to use a little bit of wax just to get things started. All right, so I'm going to start my dubbing noodle out here. Get it nice and thin. This is going to break all the rules that I've mentioned thus far about dubbing. Start that on there. Actually, Dave goes back and forth and back and forth. again, I'm breaking rules. Gets it started on the thread and then just starts wrapping. Still got the thread inside like usual. If it's getting too thick, you can pull some back. Too sparse, you can push some up. But that's about where I want to be right there. See how this has wrapped itself around the thread real well. There's the Dave Whitlock method of dubbing. Again, that just might be one of the simplest. Between that and touch dubbing, it might be the two simplest methods that I've shown as far as dubbing. Tie off my rib. And I'm going to go back to the old-fashioned method, I'll say, of dubbing here. I'm going to use some of this that's on my finger. Wax on there, help things go. Now this is the straight out of the package. I didn't mix any natural fur with this. Now a little bit more, because I do want the thorax area not only to be darker, a little more prominent, a little darker, and or a little more larger diameter. I'm gonna stop right there. Trim that up some. Yep, second thought. If I do decide to add more dubbing right there, this would certainly be the time to do it, as you all know. So I am going to add a little bit more. That looks better to me, and I'm sure it'll look better to the fish. Back up a little. Trim here, trim there. Now, let's go back over to this camera. And I got a partridge. Dave, somewhere in the recipe I got that you could use either partridge for hackle or a soft hen patch. This stuff, this is more fragile. That rickus is very fragile. It's very apt to break. I speak from experience. These feathers are more durable, in my opinion, and less chance of it breaking while I'm wrapping it on camera. Now, and it's going to be wrapped pretty much soft hackle style. If you've ever tied a soft hackle pattern, you know what I'm talking about. After shaft feather, always keep those. We'll go back over to the vice camera. Strip off all this down below that I won't need. Pull these fibers back. And this would be the tie-in spot It's getting really fragile looking. I'm gonna switch feathers on you. I've got one here that I've already prepared. This is going to be a much better candidate. All right, so this is going to be the tie-in spot. I've gotten rid of all these fibers, all these barbs down here that I'm not going to need. I'm only going to want to wrap once or twice around the hook, so I'm only going to need that many. I'm only going to need a few barbs on either side. I'll pull this back. Tie this in behind this triangle. Four turns forward. 3 turns backward. Pull that up. Release down. Get rid of those. Flip all this back. So we got about 1 full turn. It's all right. Enveloped around the hook. That's what I was after. Actually, Dave said he cuts off the barbs that are up on top. So the whole idea of this component is to simulate legs. But I like to leave them all on because I'm thinking a little bit more movement in the water can't hurt. Just a little bit more of the darker dubbing in front. A little bit of a head. And whip finish. A little bit of dressing up. If I was going to fish this, it would go right in my box just the way it is. Let's see if I can't make this collar look a little bit better since it's a demo. I like to sit here and mess around with it the rest of the evening, but I'm not going to. So let's see, I should be able to zoom in some with this camera angle. So there's a guild version of a David Whitlock red fox squirrel hair nymph. And that's what I had planned. Questions or comments?
Yeah, good job.
Well, thanks. Oh, let's see. Bob
Good
made
looking
it.
flies.
Appreciate it. Yeah. Well, of course, I can't take a lot of credit for that, just for that tying job. it is very, very effective fly.